out in the foyer there. If you want to come up and sit at the table, there's plenty of room. Not everyone took us up on the in-person. So anyway, but welcome to our Active Transportation Committee meeting. I think it's the first time in 2 years I've been up here to the Gateway. So it's good to see you in person. I'm Mayor Troy Walker from Draper City, and I'm really glad to see all of you that came down. I think they've planned something fun for us today. If you came down in person, you're going to get to ride some e-bikes and scooters. If not, you won't. So, but we see a number of you online, so you guys are going to miss out. So there you go. Anyway, we'd like to, Hugh, do you want to do a roll call? How do you want to? Oh, go ahead. We'll do our roll call.
Since we have so many participants here in person, how about everyone states their name and the organization they're from? My name is Rosie from WFRC.
This is Mayor Braden Mitchell from Riverdale City.
Mark Johnson with Lehigh City.
Ted Knowlton, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Brett Mackett, Utah Department of Health.
Mark Brown.
Hi, I'm Jen Oxborough. I'm with Bike Utah.
Okay. Mark Bradley with Brigham City.
Neda Kiani with UDOT.
Mike Sopchuk with WFRC.
Blake Thomas with Harriman City.
Yeah, go ahead. Start.
Grantsville City Mayor. We also have online Jaron Robertson with UTA and Alyssa Idelin. I believe that's all online.
All of us in the room. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. Blaine Fackrell, Commissioner of Morgan County.
Dory Johnner, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Hugh Van Wagenen, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Troy Walker, Draper City.
Andrew Gruber with the Wasatch Front Regional Council. Welcome to WFRC. And just for housekeeping, if you're here in the room, help yourself to drinks and snacks. And the restrooms are right behind this wall, behind the reception desk.
That's a great introduction, Andrew. Jeff Silverstream in Mill Creek.
The restroom. Joy Petro, Layton City.
Mike West with Lehigh City.
Stan Penfold, Green Bikes.
Kevin Johnson with Baku e-bikes.
And Dave Andre, Baku e-bikes.
Josh Garver with Baku e-bikes.
Brian Marsing with Baku e-bikes.
Rick Crosley with Lime.
Tom Jackson, citizen activist. Roger Crandall, West Valley, representing Real Salt Lake.
Katie Romig with Salt Lake County.
Morgan Haddon with Get Healthy Utah.
Bert Granberg, WFRC Analytics Group.
Stephanie Tomlin, UDOT.
Clint Campbell, UTA.
Tyler Torres, WFRC intern.
Jen Local, UTA.
Shawnamika Mag.
Ryan Kump, Sandy City.
Perfect timing from Sandy. Good work. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone to the meeting today. Just a reminder, and we'd like to welcome as well. After our meeting, we're going to gather out on 500 West at the Linear Park. We're going to do demo e-bikes and scooters. We'd like to especially thank Green Bike, Lime, Baku Bikes for making demos available. So if you haven't ridden an e-bike or a scooter, now is your chance. We're going to go out there and hopefully have some fun and get to see the different technologies that are available for active transportation. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from April 13th, 2022. Is there a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 13th, 2022.
A motion by Mayor Petro to approve the minutes, or second?
I'll second.
All right, Commissioner, tell me your name again.
Blaine Fackrell.
Great, Commissioner Fackrell, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, seeing none, the minutes are approved unanimously. I usually do roll call votes, but there's too many people here for this. I always make my council go on the record. There's no hiding. No hiding. You got to vote. Anyway. Next item is the chair's report. And we were going to talk a little bit about today. You're going to put that map up on there. The Golden Spoke. If you didn't have a chance to join us on the Golden Spoke ride in celebration of Bike Month, it was a really cool opportunity. It was the first in-person Golden Spoke event since 2019. There were two main starting points. You had one in Ogden and one in Provo. The rides were organized. We had a ride from Draper. There was one from Mill Creek and North Salt Lake at midpoint stations in Farmington, and Lehigh provided water and snacks and marked the 25-mile marker if you were coming up from Provo. So for the whole 50 miles. So the final destination of it, if you look at that map, was this really cool Tracy Aviary Nature Center that is right on the Jordan River Trail. It's awesome, actually, how amazing it is. It's in South Salt Lake. It's like right on the Jordan River Trail. So if you want to ever take your kids, grandkids, you can go right on that trail and just go into this really little cool aviary and just enjoy all the things that the river has. And they've got plans for doing one out in Riverton at some point. So there's that sort of expansion is cool on the side of the river across from us. But we want to thank for putting that together. That was a big deal. And I rode in it. I rode from Draper up to the aviary and back. And it was a good ride.
On an e-bike or?
No, it was on a regular bike.
Nice work.
And I got COVID right after that. So I don't know if it was from that or not.
Probably not.
But we want to thank the Jordan River Commission for their efforts in helping us move Utah, UTA, and of course, Wasatch Front Regional Council for organizing it. We had great support from Davis County Transportation, Rocky Mountain Power, Salt Lake County Health Department, and the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation. So if you didn't have a chance to do it this year, we encourage you next year. It's fun. There were a lot of people. I think we had 30 that rode from my city up to the aviary, and there were a lot of people. It was awesome. They had a food truck, a couple food trucks up there, and it was great way to see the Jordan River. Mayor?
Yeah, Mayor, we had those of us in Mill Creek had the easiest ride because it's all downhill from Mill Creek to the Tracy Aviary, but on the Parley's Trail. But anyway, we had probably about 12 of us that rode from that location down. And then we were unable to get back up because we discovered there were a bunch of great places to eat in South Salt Lake and brew pubs and things like that. So.
Yeah, it's a cool, I mean, and you can, as you know, you can go from all the way up in Ogden all the way to the Utah Lake on this trail. And I don't know how many trails are like that in the country, but that's pretty awesome. So we're lucky to have such good partners over the years. All the vision that went into Jordan River Trail, Western Railway Trail, Lehigh, all the connections. We're living in a good time.
And Mayor and Hugh, correct me if I'm wrong, the Golden Spoke is the longest continuous protected bike trail west of the Mississippi, right? Yeah. Cool thing for us to all be proud of and keep building on.
And in this era of texting and driving, it's probably the only safe place to ride on a paved surface as well. It's certainly protected. That's true. It's getting all right. And
Mr. Chairman, can I
go ahead.
just make a quick thing on that? 2024, we're looking forward to extending that ride from Heber all the way to Ogden. We have a project, and I won't talk about it here, but we have a project that is going out to bid this fall. It'll make the connection up Provo Canyon.
That'll be a great connection. Wow.
You'll beat us on the downhill then, I think.
And then if you look at the Golden Spoke map up there on the screen, these spurs are what are really kind of interesting to think about going forward. You've got the Pony Express spur coming. I think they're in progress. our Lehigh Porter Rockwell spur that we connected with Lehigh a couple years ago. But you're seeing these spur connections what are giving people a really good opportunity to get on the Jordan River Trail. And, we're fortunate to have, like I said, cities that are getting involved and care about these connections because the people sure do. Hopefully everyone enjoyed Bike Month and plans on turning it into a bike year. That would be great. I know we have a lot of cities that, like Provo does a really good job kind of doing a Bike Month. There's Mayor Kafusi, they do a good job. I'm hoping next year to make it a little bigger deal in our city. I wasn't thinking, but I think we'd like to make it a bigger deal. So I guess maybe our challenge might be in your communities. Let's all try and make it a bigger deal next year. Maybe have all of us having at least a different event. So I think that'd be a good thing to do.
Mayor, to that point, I actually had a few folks reach out, a few additional private sector folks reach out to me, including Utah's largest home builder, and say, that's a really, really cool event. It's to celebrate a critical community asset, and that they would like to be engaged next year. And so I think you're right. And Hugh, I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to build momentum and get more sponsors involved and make it an even bigger event next year, if you're willing.
Yeah,
I love event planning, Andrew.
Yeah, I think, Bike Month sneaks up on you, and at least a little bit. It kind of snuck up on us. It shouldn't have, but it did. But we participated in the Golden Spoke. That was our event that we did. But I'd like to do something in addition to that. Anybody else have any comments on Bike Month and the Golden Spoke ride? A lot of e-bikes on the trail. A lot of people that I rode with a lady that, she said, if I didn't have this e-bike, I'd never be doing this, but I'm doing it and I'm having a great time. And she had a great time. She said, we ride this trail all the time now. E-bikes are open in the world for people that otherwise couldn't ride. So I think they're fantastic. And are there any other comments on that? All right. All right, we're on to item number 3, which is our, I guess, general public comment period. Is there anybody in the audience or online that would like to make a general public comment? No one online?
No one online.
No one here? Yes, sir. Give us your name if you would. and We'll get you.
Roger, hold on. I want to
We'll
get a
get you
mic
a mic.
to you, or go up to the mic up there.
If you
or
would, yeah,
Take
that'd
a
be
mic
great.
handed. Oh, Hugh's on it.
Thank you.
Grab a mic, any mic.
My name is Roger Crandall. I live in West Valley. Rode up here today. I'm a fan representative for Real Salt Lake and Rio Tinto, and one of the projects I've been trying to work on as an advocate is to get some bicycle infrastructure built around Rio Tinto for bikes. They're totally lacking it. 3 little rings, rather a disgrace for a city this size and a soccer venue like that. And I think with the new owners, they've got money in deep pockets and they know this should be built. They just need to have a push. Getting the public to get involved in it is difficult because they don't know that it's possible to bike there and there's no place to really park that's safe. People have expressed the same issue with other big sports venues, especially like the Bees Stadium. Not safe at all, even though they have some rings to lock your bikes to. Vivint Center, I mean, the same owner, Ryan Smith, could start building some stuff there. And we need these kind of sites in and around big sporting venues so that we kind of start to move in the direction that you see in Europe. In a little known town that no one's ever heard of, friends were biking there in Holland to a soccer game, and we're 3-4 blocks away. It was every pole and tree had 2 or 3 bikes parked by it. And when they got to the stadium, there was a 3-story high bicycle garage. Now, what have we got? We have 3 little rings at Rio Tinto that need to be enhanced. And I'd like to see a meeting with some of you officials, Sandy Mayer and others, to meet with officials of Real Salt Lake to see if we can't get some kind of locked in parking space for bikes that they have over there. They have plenty of room, and it would be a good feather in their cap to have that started there, and then other places could build onto that, both at Vivint Center and for the baseball and for hockey in West Valley, and also, up at the universities for all the, football games. They need parking structures for cyclists. So that's my 2 bits.
All right, well, thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment? All right, then we'll move on from the public comments and go to item number 4. It's our shared e-mobility laws, regulations, and general overview. Hugh is going to give us an overview of the e-mobility and maybe how it's interacting with the law. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll try and be brief this morning. I feel like I should turn this way. Just so we can get to, the folks that are here to talk to us more about their industries. But just to start off, right, e-mobility, it's kind of a funny word. E stands for electric. You may have heard this. You may have heard the term micromobility. You may have heard the term shared mobility. Just sort of a catch-all as this area of transportation continues to evolve. It's hard to keep up. But today, I certainly want to talk about electric scooters, bike share, and just electric bikes generally. And this, I can use this, right? Sweet. Perfect. So just by raise of hands online and in the room, how many of you have seen any type of device like this in your community ridden by somebody? All right, I'm not sure if anybody did not raise their hand. So this is just a look, talking about what kinds of devices we're talking about. E-scooters can, what you typically look at, somebody stands on, but there's also ones with seats. E-bikes come in various shapes and sizes and for different purposes, and we'll see some of those later today in different classes that I'll talk about in just a moment. And then over on the far right of this slide here, you'll see there's all sorts of mini devices, skateboards, hoverboards, one wheels, these smaller Segway type units, and all sort of fit under this category of e-mobility. When we're talking about shared micromobility, that's typically not any of the devices outside of scooters and bikes. There might be some slight variations, but typically we're talking about e-scooters and bikes. And you can see in this graph of North America, right, they're all over the place, these shared mobility systems. And for those fortunate enough to be able to see quickly there across the Wasatch Front area here in Utah, many communities have some type of shared mobility system available to their residents and visitors alike. But some of you may be asking, wait a second, didn't the pandemic kill all this stuff and all these companies did not survive and everybody stopped riding on these shared mobility systems, right? Bike share, scooter share. You can see in the chart here in the darker blue, that is the trips as lockdown happened in 2020. You can see gradually though, they started to come back over the year and get back, not quite to where it was pre-pandemic. It's just that yellow orange line on the top, but rides definitely started to tick back up throughout 2020 as compared to, you can see that the transit level below there. Big question that gets asked all the time, and we've heard this from our committee, which is why we're doing this day to day with highlighting all of these devices in this theme, is are e-scooters and e-bikes considered motorized? Right, we see a lot of these signs, especially on our trails. Right, it's less of a question of whether or not they can be in a bike lane, on a street or something like that, but how do we treat them as communities on our trail systems, whether that's a paved trail like the Golden Spoke that was mentioned earlier, or any of our dirt trails, of which we have so many around as well. So I'll try and give you a little bit of insight from a state perspective. What does our state say on this? I apologize for all the text. That is just the nature of state code. So these words here, these are highlights I've pulled from Utah State Code. This is Chapter 41, Title 6A, Section 111, definition of motor-assisted scooters. So except as otherwise provided, a motor-assisted scooter, so an e-scooter, is subject to the provisions under this chapter for a bicycle. All right, so keep that in mind. When we talk about scooter share programs, a local authority may regulate the operation of a motor-assisted scooter within its jurisdiction. Okay, so we're talking about state code, but local jurisdictions can regulate them. And local authority may authorize the operation of a motor-assisted scooter on sidewalks and regulate that operation. But any regulation adopted by a local authority, right, for a motor assisted scooter shall be consistent with the regulation of bicycles. So just trying to say, yes, we know they're not bicycles strictly, but we want them to operate and be treated similarly to bicycles. So what's a bicycle? Well, it's got to be propelled human power by cranks or pedals, seat, designed to be operated on the ground. I thought that was very interesting that they had to put that in there and clarify that. And then it has a wheel diameter. It includes bicycle, includes electric assisted bicycle. So we'll get into that here in just a second. So again, similar to the scooter provision, electric assisted bicycle is subject to provisions under this chapter for a bicycle. An individual may operate an electric assisted bicycle on a path or trail designated for the use of a bicycle. Okay, state law again. But a local authority or state agency may adopt an ordinance or rule to regulate or restrict the use of an electric assisted bicycle or specific classification, we'll talk about that in a second, of such bicycle on a sidewalk, path, or trail within the jurisdiction of the local authority or state agency. So again, state code, but does give some authority to local agencies and jurisdictions to further regulate if they find it appropriate. So there are different classes of electric assisted bicycles, and based on state code, if an electric assisted bicycle does not fit into one of these categories, is no longer considered a bicycle per those previous definitions. So there's class 1, class 2, and class 3. These images with the little the numbers on the left are example decals that are required by state code for vendors to put on their bicycles when they're selling them here in Utah, to talk about the different classifications and make sure they are e-bikes by definition. So the class 1 provides pedal assist. So you have to be pedaling the bike in order for it to give you assistance, and it can only go up to 20 miles per hour. That's class 1. Class 2 can have a throttle system on it, so you don't need to pedal for yourself to be propelled along, but it only again goes to 20 miles per hour. There's a cap there. And then class 3, no throttle, so you do have to be pedaling for it to assist you, but it can go up to 28 miles per hour. So those are class 1, 2, and 3 e-bicycle definitions. According to the People for Bikes folks, it's an industry advocacy group in the bicycle industry. You can see Utah here is in green. They've designated Utah having model legislation when it comes to e-bike regulations. So it's a great platform to build off of as local communities consider the nuance and context for their own rules and regulations around e-bikes and e-scooters. And so this graph shows e-bike imports, not sales, but imports in the blue from 2019, 2020, and 2021. And you can see they've been rising every year, about 250,000 in 2019, 450,000 in 2020, and 880,000 in 2021. Significant growth in e-bike imports, which presumably translates to sales. And in the red, just for context, I didn't have 2019 data, but in the red, it's electric vehicle and plug-in hybrid sales. So for all the hype around cars that are getting electrified, you can see the e-bike market is really outpacing it. And this is just the United States. It's much, much different in other parts of the world. But Dave with Baku's here, and there you are. Sorry, do you mind just speaking really quickly to what you've seen as far as a trend line for sales in the e-bike market?
Yeah, Dave Andre, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Baku Bikes, and we've been around 5 years in Ogden now and started in Layton. Our first year of 2018, we sold around 500 bikes, and this year we're on mark for about 20,000 bikes we'll sell, and then next year about 40,000 bikes. So they really have been growing. And I would probably say 60% to 70% of our customers are 50 and above, because it is some of them they can't get out and enjoy the bike riding anymore, and that now makes it possible for them.
Thanks, Dave. So again, that's really, really quick. There's conferences dedicated to this material in different forms, but we're really pleased to be able to hear from Green Bike Lime and Lehigh City in just a moment. And caveat on the state law stuff, I'm not a licensed lawyer, so if you have any questions, please consult with your local legal counsel. But with that, Mr. Chair, I'm all done. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'd like to say it's exciting. That's quite a sales jump from 500 to 20,000. Wow. All right. Our next,
Mayor, before you go in, can I just welcome
oh, yes,
the mayor from West Jordan, Mayor Burton? Is
who
here,
actually
who
rode his
probably
bike.
rode his bike here. From what, did you, Mayor? Oh, bike and train. Nice.
Multimodal.
Well done. Well done. And our friends from Davis County, Jeff and Bartley, welcome. Nice to have you here. What, speak into the mic so you can, so the folks online can hear your bragging, I mean, your accomplishments.
If this meeting ends early enough, Mayor Walker, then I'll ride all the way home.
Excellent. I'm going to try and get it done early enough for you then. So next item's 5, and it's a presentation by Green Bike, Lime, and Lehigh City on shared mobility. We're going to have Stan Penford from Green Bike's Executive Director. It's going to give us an update on what Green Bike's up to. We're going to, following Stan, we'll have Alyssa with Lime scooters. We'll present on the developments in dockless micromobility world. And then finally, Mike West with Lehigh City will present Lehigh's experience with e-mobility. And I've done some e-mobility with Mayor Johnson on many occasions. So we'll give you guys, so let's go with Stan. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, while Stan's coming up, Mayor, I just want to let everybody, Stan, maybe you're about to say this already, but Stan is a good friend to WFRC and has been for a long time, former member of the Salt Lake City Council and the relatively new executive director of Green Bike. So congratulations, Stan, in your new role, continuing to find ways to serve our community. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, relatively new, 3 months. So yes, very new, actually. I just wanted to tell you, thank you for the introduction. A little bit about Green Bike and its history and sort of how we got to where we are. Green Bike was originally a concept imagined by Mayor Ralph Becker after visiting some other cities where he saw similar systems, and came back and asked Salt Lake City UTA to get together and talk about a partnership where they truly address first mile, last mile issues around multimodal transportation. And so Green Bike, the original concept was a first mile, last mile program. And we initiated the program in about 2012, 13. It's really when it started running. Most of our funding is through Wasatch Front Regional Council. It's typically CMAQ money and other partnerships, and I'll get into those a little bit in a sec. But it's been a really important role for Green Bike to be a community partner in this process. And I'll talk a little bit about how our role is potentially evolving from first mile, last mile to maybe a little bit broader system. We are currently running approximately 650 bikes, 50 stations, primarily Salt Lake City, a little bit in South Salt Lake. We're doing some expansion, pretty significant expansion in Salt Lake City this fall. And we're also opening in Ogden, the 1st of August. So that'll be our first additional city. And we're looking forward to talking with other communities who might be interested in Green Bike in their community. Some of our board members are here, so I'm kind of on the spot. But we have a pretty diverse board. We look at people who can represent transportation, cities and municipalities, bike communities, and we're always on the lookout for new additional board members. So if anybody has an interest, please let me know. We do a lot of partnerships in the community. We are a 501c3, so we are a charitable organization. That helps us in a couple of ways because we have the ability to form some unique partnerships with corporate in particular, where we get a lot of our funding for operations. So we have a pretty extensive sponsorship program. You can sponsor stations, bikes, programs, and that's one of the ways we keep our operational costs covered. We've been typically using federal dollars for capital investment, stations and bikes, and then fundraising and additional partnerships, sponsorship partnerships for our operational costs. I think we might have to modify that as we grow a little bit, but that's currently how we've been operating. So these are just some of our recent partnerships. We have a lot of partnerships with, in particular, larger corporations in the Salt Lake City area who are already on board or wanting to get on board with providing alternative transportation options for their employees. And so as you can imagine with the first mile, last mile program, it works really well. The focus has been historically people coming into Salt Lake City because of the location of the system. And that's something I think we're looking at changing as we expand to other cities, in particular along transit corridors sponsored by UTA. We also are very involved in our community. We do a lot of programming related to supporting community opportunities. It does a couple things for us. It helps us really grow support in the local communities where we are around our system and around using alternative transportation, but it also provides a ability for us to do some expansion, in particular around education and awareness as people from different markets start thinking about how they can get on an alternative piece of transportation other than their cars. This is just an example of a couple of programs we did where we actually we detail a bike, and anytime that bike is ridden, we don't make a donation to a nonprofit organization around that. And it actually is surprisingly popular, that people really enjoy that visibility, and it helps us again expand into other communities who might not traditionally think about bike transportation. These are some of the housing opportunities. We also like to partner with some of the large housing developments, in particular in downtown. There's you all know how many of those are going up. But one of the things that we are able to do is provide a big perk for developers who are trying to identify themselves uniquely in the housing market. And so one of the things we do is we talk about a sponsorship opportunity, typically for a station, and then we give promo passes to residents and guests of residents. And so for annual sponsorship, the apartment complex can provide access to Green Bike. So a lot of times, I think this is part of how we're changing a little bit. We're starting to see more stations, particularly located around large housing developments. We have been sort of focused around employment centers downtown, but now we're actually really getting a lot of requests to be around the housing market and the housing developments that are in downtown. I think that developers see that as a unique service that can set them apart from maybe some of the other residential projects. We also have an equity program where we have developed a system for providing low or no cost bike access based on income. It's a program that's evolving for us a little bit. One of our challenges is that our system is primarily credit card based. And so when you're talking about low income access, we have to be creative about people who may not have access to a credit card. And so we've developed a program where people can come into our location and they can actually get an annual pass. Typically runs around $5 for the year. And then it's either a free or discounted ride based on income. And we're looking at expanding that, partly because some of our expansion in Salt Lake City coming up immediately is in lower income neighborhoods on the west side. In fact, our next 8 major stations will be going into low income census tracts. And so we are looking at how can we ensure that people who live in those areas have access to our system. This is just an example of some feedback we've gotten around our Go Pass program. We do a lot of partnerships with communities and leaders for bike rides. The mayor's office this Sunday just did their parade entry on green bikes for Pride. It was incredibly successful. We had about 35, 40 bikes in the parade entry. It's a great visibility. It shows a lot of support for alternatives, and it was actually quite a bit of fun. We also do some charity rides. Again, this is just an example of how we partner with some of our community agencies to provide some expanded access to green bikes. We have full-time staff. All of our bikes are inspected and maintained on a regular basis. We have had challenges after the pandemic, like everybody has, of getting fully up and staffed. But I think that's hopefully turning a little bit now. We're pretty much to the point where we're staffed for our Ogden expansion. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. We hire technicians. They primarily service bikes, inspect bikes, and do a lot of rotation. A lot of our effort is making sure that bikes are balanced around our stations, so that if you show up at a station, there's a place to park your bike if you're stopping there, and there's a bike to pick up if you're picking up a bike there. So that's main focus of our techs, actually. We've got some pretty interesting opportunities, I think. We, like everybody else, saw some pretty dramatic declines in our ridership during the pandemic. 2019 was our peak year, and it was pretty significant. We're seeing some recovery. So we're seeing ridership going up now. We're encouraged by some information coming out of the downtown chamber that occupancy is getting sort of back to 65 to 80% downtown. We're seeing that. But one of the things we're also seeing, and this is a little reference to sort of a shift of our focus, is we're seeing inner city trips. We typically were transit hub to work to transit hub, and very successful in that model. Now with the exploding sort of downtown residential population, we're seeing more trips within the downtown core. And so as we look at planning for new stations, new opportunities, we're going to spend some time looking at how do we provide expanded services to people who actually live in an urban core and don't want to use their car, or maybe have given up their vehicle. So that's, I think, a new opportunity for all of us to look at, especially as we see these residential densities all up and down the Wasatch Front. It's going to really provide us with an opportunity to modify our model beyond just the commuter model. So
Stan,
yes.
excuse me. Can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
I apologize if you said this and I missed it, but how do you track your users? You know, you were talking about the location or nature of the trips. What system do you have for tracking utilization and who's riding them?
We're partnered with B-Cycle for our equipment and for our backend software. And our backend software is pretty sophisticated. There's a mobile app that's works really well. Once you're on the mobile app, you can locate stations. You can see a number of bikes at each of the stations. You can see where the e-bikes are at the stations, and we're moving towards more e-bikes. But we can count rides per user. We can count so frequency. We can count distance per user. So as someone logs in with their app and checks out a bike, we can track that distance until they check it back into a station. So we have really good information about where people are starting and ending, who our frequent riders are. And in fact, there's a list on our website of who rides the most miles and who checks out the greatest number of bikes. And there's a bit of a competition going on, which is, I think, very healthy. So we can get some really good numbers around ridership. And we can also break that out into some demographic information. That's getting better. We can track people by zip code. So we know where those riders actually live and whether they're in the city or coming in from somewhere else outside.
And
the
this
city.
is all, this is dependent on people using the app, but you don't have to use the app. Do you have to use the app?
You
to
do
use
not
the
have
system?
to use the app.
So what
You can
percentage
log
of
in.
your users or percentage of rides are done through the app versus?
Pretty significant. Regular users almost always use the app. It's a little simpler. You can check it out from an app. You can check out a bike from an app. You can check out a bike from we issue a card. You can do it with a card at the station. You can also check out a bike with whatever credit card you registered when you signed up, which can be at the station. And we're going to show that if anybody's really interested, because we've got a station right over here. We can show everybody how to log in. But yeah, it's user specific, but you do have to identify with a credit card. So it typically is pretty user specific. The ones we don't have as much data on are sort of short-term and entertainment kinds of rides. And we're seeing that go up too, actually. So we're seeing some weekend riders going up, and we're thinking most of that is sort of downtown entertainment kind of ride. Any other questions?
I'm Bartley with Davis County. Just a quick question, where you've got such good data on who's riding. Do you know what time of year they're riding? Is there a significant boost in the summer months over the winter months? How does that compare?
Yes, it's noticeable. It's very significant in the summer months. We're getting into our peak right now. And for the first couple of years, we actually shut down the system in the winter. We've left it open with limited sort of access to bikes. We've just taken some of our bikes out of the system, and a couple of the stations we closed down just depending on location. But we're seeing increasing winter use as well. Some of these people are pretty hardcore. So, and of course it's impacted by weather, but our peaks are, they start in May, and kind of starts to taper off in October, 1st to middle of October. But we are open year round now, and we've had some success with that. So it's been working. So, yeah.
Reported over the years, you probably, I've found 3.
Is the question about abandoned green bikes? Yeah. Yeah. And we did for a little bit, probably 2019, early 2020, we did have a kind of a pretty significant theft issue. It had to do with how credit cards and gift cards were processed. We no longer process gift cards because that turned out to be where we were losing our bikes, because we couldn't follow up on people. So they would check it out with a low paid gift card. But I think that's been resolved, though it creates a challenge because it does require a credit card to check out a bike. So that's why we did the low income program.
And I've seen 2 recent homeless guys with green bikes, one without a saddle and a lock on it. So do I report that to you? Do we call the police, report it to you?
Actually, you can report it to us in a location, and we won't necessarily take it away from somebody because that becomes a bit of an issue. But if we do, especially if it's abandoned, we will recover it, and often can repair and get it back in circulation. Not always, but often. So,
thank you.
Yes.
So one quick question. I know on one of your earlier slides, you tied into the homeless youth. So do you mind just elaborating how you're dealing with that?
I'm sorry, what's this? That's
On your slide, you had
Right.
referenced the homeless youth centers.
right.
So I know that you said that you hand out cards, but is that how you're tracking them or allowing them to use the
Yeah,
bikes as well?
they're part of a specialized program. So we actually have a partnership with them where we give the service provider promo codes, and they actually can issue their promo codes to their some of them are residents, but some of them are just participants, and so they can access it through there. So that's a really good example where we're not expecting the individual to necessarily be able to access the program, or where they can't, where there's a barrier. We might work with a service provider to actually provide it to their whole base, their client base. We do have a challenge, though, that our contract is 18 and older for riders, so that creates some issues for us. Yes.
One of your charts listed EcoBox, and you didn't explain that. Could you please?
What are we doing with EcoBox? I think I might have to follow up with you on that. I think that is actually where we give them some promo codes based on their clients. And so we use it as a sponsorship partnership.
Mayor Burton.
If a city wants to have green bikes brought into us, how does that work? Do you come visit us? Do you pay us? Tell me about it.
That sounds like a mayor question. We absolutely will come visit you. I think what we're going to see over the next probably 12 to 18 months is a lot of interest from communities outside Salt Lake. Ogden's our first expansion. They approached us about probably 2 or 3 years ago and asked us if we would partner with them. And it's been a great partnership. They've been working on acquiring the capital. We're in the final process of negotiating out the maintenance and operational component, and that will be our role with them. We do a lot of different configurations, so we're pretty flexible that way. With Salt Lake City, it's similar. Salt Lake City owns the equipment and the bikes. We provide the operations and maintenance and the back end system for them. So typically what we're looking for is initially some investment in capital. CMAQ has been that primary source up until now. I think there are other options as well, but CMAQ's been one of the primary funding streams for equipment. And I hope that we're going to see that expanding. It's been pretty stable. I think we're going to see that opportunity expanding for a lot of communities in the next 5 years.
Stan, thank you. We've got to hear from
Perfect.
Alyssa from
Thanks.
Lime. Thank you for your presentation. Alyssa, are you ready?
Hi guys. Yep. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second.
Mayor, we did have a question in the chat from Nikki Navio. And her question is, do you keep track of demographics of your ridership? Would be interested to know breakdown in age, gender, etc.
Well, let us get through these other two presentations. We have a panel question discussion
Okay.
that we sort of jumped into. So Alyssa, go ahead if you would, please.
All right. Great to meet you guys. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Well, I just wanted to start with introducing myself. So my name is Alyssa. I've been with Lime for about 2.5 years. I joined in December of 2019, so pre-pandemic. And then with us in person, we have Rick Crosley, who is our local leader. I think I see him in green over there. And so, he really is our, in-person leader that's managing Salt Lake City, Ogden, and several other, key markets. Would love to just walk you through our presentation and look forward to some questions that you guys have. So a little bit about Lime. I know you guys, are familiar with them, overall, but as a global leader, we have over 250 million rides in the cities that we serve. And really, let's see my slide. Sorry about that. So over 250 million rides in the global cities that we serve. And I apologize, my slide is skipping. I think my Wi-Fi is struggling here. And globally, we have over 200 cities. So my role specifically, I support the western side of the United States. And then, Rick is in Salt Lake, based in Salt Lake. He's been in that community over 5 years and actually is a native of your city that we're, here and presenting for him. So looking forward to the demo and, you guys getting to know him as well. So I wanted to share with you a little bit of the reasons why we think, Lime and micromobility specifically would, impact and benefit your guys' city. So obviously, tons of growing community, really looking to see, the transportation continue to improve for the industry and for the community there, first and last mile. And I'll go through and share some of our specific stats as well, locally that we have, and then, some of the data that's behind that. I think, additionally, we have, multimodal transportation. So Rick does have some bikes and scooters that, he'll be doing demonstrations on. I'm really exciting to see as well as how far the industry has grown. Overall, it is still a new industry, but it's how far we've grown. And Rick will demonstrate that today based off the demo. But there's been such a tremendous improvement, both in hardware and in software and tech over the last several years. So a couple of items here. Just wanted to highlight, I think the reasons, that it's impactful in communities and specifically impactful here. And I'll walk you guys through some more details in terms of the low income and the what we call Lime access. But really, our goal and our mission is to provide transportation to first mile, last mile, as well as to be able to, impact the community at an affordable price. So really what we're looking for here, shared scooters, convenient to use. We do have a variety of ways to pay that we can walk through, and continuing to, I think foster, small businesses, foster, transportation, foster low income is a key part of our company and the initiatives that we have that we're bringing forward. So if I'm going too fast, please feel free to stop me. A couple items here, just continuing. So we really work with the city. So our goals are, to be a partner and to work with the city and to really, build on that. So with the cities, things that we work on and things that we do in a variety of cities are around parking corrals. We have the ability to make that digital, as well as something that's structured on the ground. So really looking to ensure that their sidewalks are safe, that there are, places to park vehicles, that it's easy to use for riders. We provide a lot of in-person training and demonstrations, such as what we call a First Ride Academy, where we are in person teaching, new users. We provide free helmets. We also have a lot of in-app training that, we can mandate and require. And that's optional in terms of requiring what we call training mode. So a lot of tech items that have advanced and that are really exciting for our users. All right, so when we look at various cities, all of our cities that we serve across the U.S. and globally are very different. We work to really tailor the vehicles that we have, the modes of transportation that we have to the city to ensure that it meets the needs of the community, and as well as a great operator, that we're a great operator for the cities. So we work to tailor that. Most recently, Rick was able to launch our vehicles on Hill Air Force Base. So there's bikes and scooters, and really to be able to serve that specific community on Hill Air Force Base. And a couple of just exciting stats for, locally, there's over 1.5 million rides in Salt Lake City. That's lifetime rides. And then in terms of, Ogden, over 200,000 rides. So there's definitely, I think, a significant, need and want from the communities and from local both businesses and users for transportation, as well as continuing to foster their education, how they get to and from locations. So I mentioned briefly what we call our Lime Access Program, and what that is it is providing a significantly discounted ride for our users. And so this just walks through, what is our Lime Access pricing that we run across North America, but specifically, in Utah and Salt Lake. And really what that is it's users that are enrolled in a federal or low income assistance program. And there's a variety of ways to enroll, and we work to really make it easy. We can support that in person. We have that on our app, but working to really ensure that everyone, regardless of their income, has an ability to ride and has transportation that's available to them. You can see here specifically in Salt Lake, over $100,000 have been used of this program from our Lime Access riders locally. I'm talking a little bit, I know there's a couple questions on the previous slide, and some conversation, around what's called VMT, so vehicle miles traveled. And so there's a ton of great work that's going into this locally, and just continuing to improve with the industry. So examples of this are swappable batteries, and Vic will be able to demonstrate that for you today. But with the vehicles that we have that are our newest vehicles, it is a swappable battery. And what that means is that there are less trips to and from vehicles, and vehicles getting moved to and from locations. And what that means, that vehicle has the ability to stay in the street, in use, and we are moving and swapping the battery on the vehicle versus traditionally. I don't know how many people have ridden scooters previously, but traditionally the whole vehicle needed to be picked up and moved and drove to a location where the vehicle would then be plugged in and charged. And so the new vehicle, our swappable batteries, both our Gen 4, what we call our Gen 4, which is our newest vehicle, bike and scooters do have the swappable batteries. And then additionally, we are working to transition our vans and our fleet of vehicles to EV vans as well, just continuing to, reduce our greenhouse emissions. And that's something that's, critical to our mission at Lime, and something that we work to really always get better at. And then just, a specific stat locally for Salt Lake, over 2.7 million pounds of carbon emissions have been saved based off of the number of rides that we have in that specific community. In terms of technology, I know I mentioned there's, been a ton of improvements, and, it's something that we are always getting better at and always improving. But I'm personally really excited, and, in my 2.5 years with Lime, I've already seen so much really great work in this category. So a couple of specific examples, when we talk about geofencing. Those of you that are not familiar, what we do is we draw a specific section on a map, and then we have the ability to what we call geofence it. And what that means is set up specific rules for that map location. So a couple examples are slow speed zone. So this could be an area where, scooters, bikes, shared mobility is allowed, but for a variety of reasons, we want the speed to be reduced. So we have the ability to reduce the speed of that vehicle inside that geofence. Other examples are no parking zones, meaning it's a ride through zone, but we don't want to stop the vehicle or lock the vehicle there. And the user doesn't have the ability to end the ride. No operation zones, that one is more straightforward. The vehicle, scooter or bike cannot enter that zone whatsoever. And so those are often areas that are either city related or areas that for a variety of reasons, let's say certain areas of a park or different locations that we don't want any vehicles at whatsoever. I briefly mentioned parking. So, there's a couple of just screenshots here. I don't know if you guys can see it from there, but we have what's called parking pins and preferred parking. So we can incentivize riders to park at specific locations, and we can give them ride credits or, free unlock in the future for using that program. And we also have the ability to make that mandatory. And what that looks like is the user, and when they open their app, it will show the user that you're in a mandatory park zone. And it will show what specific locations the user can park at on the map. And then the user is required, based off the geofence, to park their vehicle at that specific location. All right, so just continuing, so in the same vein of, tech and just, where we are, and we have the ability to tell any of our vehicles that are tipped over. And so when we look at our app, we have an app on our side as well as, on the back end. And so we can see any of our vehicles and have an alert set up that if any of our vehicles are tipped over or toppled over, our team is aware of that. In my experience working with cities, it's always, we want to ensure that our cities, look great and don't want there to be clutter or any unsafe conditions where our, community and pedestrians are having to step over or move vehicles. Additionally, I mentioned just briefly in-app. So there's, a lot we can do with in-app messaging to ensure the rider is clear of the expectations of the city and as well as the program. The other thing that I would say here in terms of the in-app is that we have additional items such as we have ways to put on a requirement for late night riding where a person has to go through a cognitive test. And that really is to curb or ensure there's not people that are drinking and riding. We also have items with age verification where we can scan a user's ID to ensure that they're our expectation at Lime is that they're over 18. And so we have ways to verify and validate those items as well. Talked a little bit about community, and so what we look at here, there's a variety of things, but really working to partner, as I shared, with cities and with communities, and ensuring that our vehicles are in the right place to serve the community. And we have a local warehouse. Rick, local leader, all of our staffing is hired from the community. We do all of our own repairs. We service all of our own vehicles, and our team has some extensive training on how to ensure our vehicles are safe and the repairs that are done to ensure that. In terms of advantages and disadvantages, one thing that we've seen in terms of, market to market. So when there are cities that are neighboring each other, it does help when there is consistency across different cities' expectations in terms of the program. And so there are, users that go from city to city or ride in different cities. And so, really working with multiple cities to ensure as much as possible there are consistent regulations across close communities. So I think that helps from city regulations as well as helps the user to really ensure there's adoption of the expectations. All right, that was fast. I know I went through it fast. I know we have some Q&A, but didn't know if there's any specific line questions, and I know there's a general Q&A as well.
Thank you. We're going to hold the questions until we get the last presentation and then
Perfect.
wrap up with questions. So Mike West from Lehigh City, if you'd go next, sir. Thank you.
All right, it's great to be here. I first of all have to say I'm impressed with the number of bikes that are here. Love seeing that. I hope mine's still there when I get
Could you speak a little closer to that microphone?
Oh, yeah. This thing doesn't adjust. Hey, yeah, I hope you can hear it a little better there. So I'll be fairly brief, but I do want to just share some of our experiences and observations in Lehigh City with, we only have the e-scooters at this point. We've worked with Lime and Bird to launch some e-scooters in the city. We have spoken with Green Bikes in the past. We're hopeful in the future to work something there, get some bike share program going as well. So we started with Lime in 2019, just before the pandemic hit. So we're excited to launch. And then of course it hit, and just as we all saw, the use really went down. Lehigh is a major employment center, but once everybody goes to remote work, there's not a big population there to use them. So obviously we've been seeing an increase of use since then. Last year we worked with Bird and launched with them as well. So we have both users within the city, and we'll share a little bit about our experiences with that. One thing that was great with both of these organizations is they really were pretty good to work with on trying to draft the agreements and everything to get in place to launch the program. In the agreements, you can stipulate different things like where they can be used. You can look at the geofencing options, things. If there's places up front that you don't want scooters to be ridden or parked in certain areas. Part of the agreement, the city can have a little bit of a revenue source from it. Honestly, it's not too much, so I don't get too excited if you're working for a city. It's like 10 cents a ride, so you can get a couple $100, I guess, every couple months. But it does help contribute, and the thought with that is it can contribute towards striping and things like that for bike lanes. One thing I do want to show is that they are getting used. I'm always out on the trails on my bike, and I see people using scooters from the transit station. They're using them to get down to work. They get used a lot in our, probably mostly based on observations in one of the reports I got from Bird, in our downtown Lehigh area. So the success of the e-mobility shared programs is going to be this. It's going to be dependent on the same metrics as success for just biking and micromobility in general, which is making sure your land uses are supportive of more walking and biking, and also your infrastructure network. So you're gonna be very limited if you don't have good, safe infrastructure to use. And also if you're, Lehigh is still a very suburban community, things are still pretty spread out. So as we develop, we've got plans for trans-oriented developments, things like that, that will increase the success of these shared mobility options, as well as just active transportation in general. Yeah, so this is downtown Lehigh. Just as I go around town, I make observations and I like to take pictures. Even I've used them sometimes to get to work. Sometimes I didn't have my bike and I got off the bus and there was a scooter there for me. So it does make a very convenient option. So in Lehigh, there's definitely a gap missing that the scooters have filled. They provide an option that people otherwise wouldn't have. And then also we've had some problems. Sometimes they get launched and they're not supposed to be parked on the trails. So as I'm riding along, I see that some scooters were parked there. So But again, the company's been good to work with when we, share these things with them. They quickly have resolved them in our case. At the transit stations where you get a lot of pedestrians and bikes, they tend to get in the way a little bit. When people are hurrying to get on the train, they'll just park them and run. So yeah, like in this picture here, you can see people are trying to get around, walking around all the scooters there. And as riding down a buffered bike lane there, they can create obstructions again, just where they're launched or parked can create issues. We've seen that a bit around town. That could be even more hazardous at nighttime if you're riding your bike or something and all of a sudden a bunch of scooters appear in front of you, and you can have a nice little crash. Now, things are relative, I find, so I'd rather have that, I guess, than this car that came up our shared use path there. So sounds like we need to figure out something to keep cars out. Not that it's a common problem, but I always say things are relative, but still. So one thing we have seen as well is some of our local business owners. There's been a couple examples where they've been pretty mad about scooters getting left on their private property. So, day one with Bird, we had a business owner get really mad, had all these scooters parked in their parking lot. So they were quickly got them out of there and didn't on private property, but somehow they find their way back. We find that a lot of teenagers will rent these scooters out and just have fun, jumping them off curbs and whatnot. And I guess one time they left a scooter in the parking lot and a truck ran one over at nighttime. And so he's been pretty upset, but got resolved at first, and we've had another recent complaint. So we, I guess my slideshow here, we've recently worked with them to do a little geofence on the property just to try and resolve that issue. So since then, we haven't had any problems. So again, we have had some issues, but there are solutions, just like right here. I've noticed at the University of Utah, they have parking corrals for all their bikes and scooters. So that's something that you can work with companies as well. But that was just some quick observations I've made and some of our experience with them working on the city level. So.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
We've got one more presentation from the Transportation Commission from Stephanie. Stephanie, let's give you an opportunity to try and maybe we can get back on track, and we can then hit the questions right at the end for Lime and Green Bike. There was one more. Are you ready to go, Stephanie Tomlin?
You're gonna share it.
Steph, just tell me which tab you want me on at any given time.
For sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Stephanie Tomlin with UDOT in the Central Planning Division.
Closer to that mic, if you would, please.
Okay. Yeah, Stephanie Tomlin with UDOT in the Central Planning Division. I'm here to talk about some really exciting projects that were just funded through a couple of different sources, one being the legislated $40 million of funding that was, that I know WFRC has spent a lot of time, and thank you very much for all of the kind of support around getting that funding, going from an idea to fruition. So the 40 million, and then UDOT just has regular funding that we allocate for capital projects on an annual basis, those being the TIF and the TTIF. So TIF stands for Transportation Investment Funds, and TTIF stands for Transportation Investment Funds. So I oversee some of the, wow, you have so many tabs, Hugh. I'm sorry, I was just like, what's going on up top there? I oversee some of the modeling work that we use to rank and prioritize projects for funding. So that's the kind of relevance of me being here to talk about this. I guess just a quick background, though, I think it's worth pointing out. So this legislative session, there was 40 million allocated for active transportation projects. last legislative session, there was 35 million. So let's keep it up, state of Utah, on funding active transportation projects, because I think this is a great opportunity to get a lot of these projects that I think communities really need, but they also, they need support through funding to, make them actually happen. So what you're seeing on the screen here is there's 4 tabs here. We're going to skip over transit. Transit's great. I love transit, but like the focus really I want to point out is, yeah, the TTIF first last mile, the TIF active, and then the regionally important. So these were for the TTIF first last mile and the TIF active. Those were projects that were nominated by local communities to be considered for funding. Couple stipulations about this funding source: it requires a 40% match from the local community. Think of this as UDOT funding, or state dollars funding 60% of the project, and 40% comes from the local match. The match is required to be non-UDOT administered state funds. So UDOT administers like the TAP, Transportation Alternatives Program. There's other funding sources that come directly from UDOT. All regions have contingency funds, so those cannot be used as a match, but pretty much everything else can. So federal funding, county funding, local funding. You can even do in kind. So as in, if there's time spent on the project, you can use that as the match. If you're doing a design for the project, that can be the cost of that design can be used as the match, for the match as well as right-of-way. So if you donate the right-of-way for the project itself, it can also be used for the match. So like I said, really diverse option. It's pretty much just only UDOT administered state funds that cannot be used. The only other one I'll point out is there's the Office of Outdoor Recreation. They have grants, and we're super excited to see that is often put up as a match. And that's an example of state funding, but since it's not administered by UDOT, that's a totally appropriate match as well. So that's for the first last mile and active. You might be wondering, okay, well, what types of projects, right, can they fund? First last mile, it was exciting to hear all that, discussion about that in earlier presentations. That's connections to transit via active transportation. So it's pretty loosely articulated in the code that it just must be a paved, pedestrian, or non-motorized facility that creates a connection to a transit stop or station. TIF active, there's like a little bit more in there, but generally speaking, paved pedestrian or non-motorized must demonstrate that it results in a reduction of congestion on a state facility, and it must be paved, so it can't be a soft surface trail. So that was just the overview of those two. Regionally important, those are the projects that are being considered. They were the ones being considered for that 40 million in legislated funding. So those were a curated list of projects developed by UDOT in collaboration with the MPOs. Roughly 4 to 6 projects per UDOT region. And think of them as the projects that create some regional connectivity that may be they're shovel ready to a degree, and that they are going to provide, the community is kind of ready and really excited about these projects. So these were not nominated. They were just a list was curated. The exciting thing about this is it only requires a 20% match for the local community. So 80% was covered through the legislated funding. So with that, this list, so these 3 lists as of, so not last Thursday, but the Thursday before, all of this funding has to get approved by the State Transportation Commission. And it was approved unanimously. So this is just really exciting. We had it was, I think, $78 million in either the legislated funding or UDOT dollars going to the first last mile active and regionally important in over 32 diverse communities. So as in, we're covering the spectrum of the entire state, everything from, Hurricane Utah, up to, Perry and Garden City. It's literally across the board being funded projects. And the scopes of projects you can see on this list, for example, I'll just call out the Southern Parkway Trail that's on SR 7 down in Washington County, $12 million project with, so they're matching that at 2 million with the contribution from UDOT being 10 million. So, that's a massive project, but there were other projects, just, adding bike lanes where needed or shared use paths that were not quite as large as this, like 100,000. So again, it really ranged and varied, but in a lot of instances, these are filling in some really big gaps in the active transportation network. So I think we can provide this link in the notes so you can review the projects. We're also working on a map right now, so you'll be able to go to a map and actually be able to click around and see what projects were funded. But with that, I'll just pause. Any questions about this?
Let me, I appreciate no need for questions, but we're a little bit behind. We've got a commitment to get outside. So I think what I propose we do is all these folks will be outside. You can ask them questions when you're out there using the stuff, but thank you for your presentation. The next item is to get outside and use the e-bikes and the scooters and try it out. So we'd like to get to the next item on our agenda is just to go over our next meeting will be August the 10th, 2022. And then just upcoming events, we have the Transcom meeting, June 16th at 2, West Jordan's bike ride with the mayor, June 18th at 9:30, and a webinar, the past, present, future electric bicycling. Then we'd need a motion to adjourn.
Mayor Walker, just can I, real quick, before we lose hey, Stephanie, I just want to note, I know we're not taking questions now, but Stephanie's point about $78 million in active transportation projects just approved. I mean, that is a big, big deal. And we've been working towards that for years and years. And that's just what was approved through the Transportation Commission. That doesn't include what the cities and the other funds from the cities and the counties and WFRC, et cetera. So there is just, I just wanted to make a brief pause to reflect on the incredible progress that we have made on funding active transportation. And we need to do more in all areas of our state. And I think, Stephanie, you said, let's keep the momentum up. And so amen to that. Thank you.
Yeah, between that and funding for transit the state's doing, we're in a really good spot. It's amazing. Got to get a motion to adjourn so we can get outside. Mayor Petro, second. Mayor, all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Nobody opposed. Okay, we are adjourned. We'll see
Tell
down.
everybody what we're doing now, please.
Yeah, please stick around. So if you came in the front doors of our office through the elevator, don't go that way. Go right. We'll go down the stairs and just across them are the Fifth West Park. It's linear park there. You can see Baku has some stuff set up. Lime has some stuff set up. And as Stan mentioned, the green bike station is right there and you can show and check out bikes. So thank you for being here and we'll head out that way.
Out the front door, turn right down the stairs.
Down the stairs. Yep.